Coming up on the Empowered Woman podcast.
I think the ability to look at yourself and being honest with yourself that, yes, you are not doing really well right now, that it is time to check out for a little bit, was the thing that I learned. And I carry it with me in a very deep way.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on personal growth, visibility, and profit for women entrepreneurs. If you're wanting to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice in business, you're in the right place. I am so glad that you're here. My name is Marta Spurk, and I'm your host, empowerment coach, visibility and marketing expert, and all things motivation extraordinaire. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much for joining me today.
So happy to be here, Marta.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We had like a 15-minute warm-up to this conversation. I was like, all right, we need to start recording. I'd love to hear more about who you are and what you do so our listeners can get to know you better. But first, I will start by saying that I was just amazed that you're so in love with the Brazilian culture. You just said something that it was so funny, and I'll have to reiterate that you said you're an honorary member.
Yes, I like to think I am, because honestly, my best friend is Brazilian. The women in my life, I live on the West Coast. I grew up on the East Coast. It's 3,500 miles away. The women here who help me with my family and my children are all from Brazil, and they are the most loving, most thoughtful, most amazing people with beautiful families. And I am always saying, will you please take me in? Will you please let me be part of your family? Because I just love you. And my best friend is always, her family comes to visit once or twice a year. And I always get to hang out with them. And I always ask them, like, will you please make me an honorary member? They're like, you're crazy.
That's so fun. Well, that means that we're already besties. If you love Brazil so much.
Love. My kids grew up on a steady diet of pão de queijo.
Oh, that's great. Very healthy.
Yeah.
Well, tell us more who you are and what you do. Give us the scoop.
Sure. So I work at a company. I work at a company called Vintage Wine Estates, and it's I think the 10th largest wine holding company in the United States. Vintage Wine Estates acquired my company, which was also a wine company. It was a direct to consumer business, so it was kind of known as like the Warby Parker of wine. You go to our website. You can't buy it anywhere. You can't buy our wines in store. You can only buy it online. And the wines that you get are super high end at a really good price. My company was acquired in 2017. I've been with Vintage since 2017, and I essentially oversee what is called their direct to consumer business and their e-commerce business. And DTC is really everything. It includes hospitality, so wine tasting rooms. We have 13. It includes e-commerce related to those tasting rooms, e-commerce related to lifestyle brands, e-commerce related to digitally native brands. So I really spend a lot of time thinking about how to connect with customers. I mean, that's really like the heart and soul of my kind of like my day-to-day. My title is Chief Growth and Experience Officer, and everyone's like, that's just such a weird title. And I always say, well, at one time I was Chief Digital Officer, and everyone thought that was a weird title, and that's like super normal. The reason I asked for the Chief Growth and Experience Officer title is because I truly believe, as a person who works directly with customers, that it is my job, whether it is a customer coming to our website, a customer visiting a retail partner, a customer coming to our tasting room, a vendor working with our employees, that we have to do our best to create the best experience possible for our customers, wherever they may be. And so I've been very lucky to have a really supportive executive team at Vintage, led by an incredible woman who has inspired me and beyond. And Marta, I think you'll really understand this. I worked primarily with men the majority of my career. And I had worked with a few women, not many, not women in serious positions of power. And this is the first woman I've ever worked with in a serious position of power. And it is just, it really has been transformative for me on so many levels.
That's wonderful.
That's me.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. And I love everything, even from the beginning with you saying moving from the other side of the country, which is almost like a different country.
It is
far apart, right?
It is.
So many transitions, so many changes. And then add in working in a business, being acquired by somebody else, and having to handle customers and reach them and find ways of reaching them. One thing that I would love for you to tell us more is how these different experiences, because we get to know ourselves best when we're going through challenges, right? That's when we see what we're really made of and how we react, right? How do you react when you're under pressure? So I'd love for you to share a little bit about your personality and the things that you learned about yourself. Something else that I like to say is through, marriage, motherhood, those are the big ones that it's like, all right, now I get to see who I really am.
Totally. The most humbling experience of life.
Yeah.
Yes. Like humbling, not in the way that I think people think. It's not, it's humbling to the extent that you're just like, I really don't know what to do. I really can't, like, this child is going to do what they want to do, whether you like it or like, there's only so much you can influence. And from that perspective, it is very humbling. And your kid is their own being, and coming to terms with that when you're a woman who has been trained to be XYZ can be very challenging. I would say that for me, and I think we talked about this very briefly, I had my children. I was working. I had just started the wine company with my now ex-husband, who's a great friend too. We co-parent great. I love him to death. But running a company together and going through what we went through is probably a little too much for at least it was a little too much for us. But when I had both my children, I could not take a break because our company was a startup. And it was just the two of us, and we were kind of in the throes of growing the business. I never really took any time off. I never took any maternity leave. And I don't, there's a history of postpartum in my family. And I think that along with not being able to take time off was super challenging for me. And I would say that, my first one, it was like I was able to pull through it. The second one, I have two daughters. Oh, wow. Like it was super intense. And I remember Brooke Shields came out. I'm very old. Not that Brooke Shields is, but she came out with the book, When the Rain Comes Down. And it really was, I saw the world in gray, like everything just looked gray. And I really was, the business was really taking off. All the media wanted to come and take pictures of us and whatnot. And I had this, beautiful 2-year-old and this brand new little one. And I really felt like I was going to have a breakdown. I mean, that's really the only way I can explain it. Because I was lifting the family and I was lifting the business, and my partner at the time, Cameron, my husband, he was, the face of the business. He was kind of the talent, and I was like the operations center. And so it almost like it just kind of crushed me a lot. It just began to crush me. And I remember my sister came out, and my sister is actually a psychiatrist. And she said, I really think you need to see somebody. I think you really need to talk to somebody. And I was just so kind of like in that state of mind, like, no, I'm fine. She's like, no, I really think you should. And after some time, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go talk to somebody. And it was like life-changing. It truly was life-changing, because I really was crushed by the responsibility of these children who I love, are my priority, by the responsibility of running a business, by the responsibility of running a house, by the responsibility of, just of showing up. And it just became, it was almost too much. And I was able to work with this therapist who helped me like kind of break it apart in like small little bits. And it was like, it sounds so pedantic for like a person who has 2 graduate degrees and blah, 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 like that I would have to go back to like basic building blocks, but that's really what it was. And I think the ability to look at yourself and being honest with yourself that, yes, you are not doing really well right now, that it is time to check out for a little bit, was the thing that I learned. And I carry it with me in a very deep way, because I have about 150 people on my team, and I have about, 10 to 12 people who report directly to me. Half of them are women. Half of them are, at some, point in time, looking to have families, are having families. Yeah. And they're always so worried. They're like, I can't take time off. Like, I'm so worried, like what's going to happen? Like everything's going to fall apart. I'm like, go take time off. Like, just do it. Take your maternity leave. Like, give yourself the space, give yourself the mental, that, and they're just like, but it's, so competitive. And I actually think there's something that we have to do better structurally in our country about supporting women who are working full time. Yeah. And I don't think like Sheryl Sandberg's book really gets it for me. Like, I almost felt like I think Sheryl Sandberg is wonderful, but her book is like lean in. It's like, I couldn't lean in anymore. I was like leaning over. Yeah. We don't have the same support system as Sheryl Sandberg, and we don't have the same support within organizations. And so in any case, to bring this full circle, you had talked about in your own experience, just when you had to visualize having 3 children, what that would be like. And I would say that because I didn't take the time to even visualize having the children, what it would be like to have the children, to be working, to be doing all these things, like it was the struggle of my life. Oh, it really was.
Well, you already spoke to a few things that I was going to ask you. First, I always like to ask not only self-talk, the things that had been going through your mind, both positive or negative, as you were building the business. And I think you sort of spoke to that. And also the people around you, if they were supportive of the business or not. And you talking about your sister, that's huge to have somebody in your inner circle that was able to see that and to give you some guidance and direction and help you through that. Yeah. And the other piece of it is forgiveness, especially for yourself, right? Because it's a huge aspect to then cave in, quote unquote, and say, I actually need to take a break. I actually need, or I am not at my best to support the business and even to support my family. So something has got to give, and being okay with showing some vulnerability and weakness. Because I feel just like what you were saying about your employees, I can't take a break, so I can't do this. I can't have kids. I can't build a family. And it's amazing through your life experience, now you're able to look at these women and give them that support as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's really important. And I also, being that we are type A people, we don't give ourselves a break. Yeah. And the thing that is really interesting about motherhood, I don't know if you've experienced this, but for me, is that it is like an evolutionary response. Like you can't even like there's no reason or there's no logic to it. You take on nothing you've trained for in university prepares you for this feeling that you have that is almost like is older than time. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's just, and it somehow like it like kind of is in a war with who you are as the professional and just being a mom. That responsive, that like natural response to protecting your children, taking care of your children, being there for your children, like all of these things. And my friends and I, we talk about it a lot. Now our kids are a little bit older now, but it's still, we still have it, which is just this like, you just feel like a gut punch when something happens to your kid, and you're just like, it's almost, it's a little bit irrational.
Totally. Oh my goodness. Well, let's talk a little bit about empowerment. It looks like you do a great job of empowering your employees and the people around you, especially after your own experiences.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you do to empower yourself and things that you're proud of having accomplished? So this is the moment where I ask women to brag, whether it is about their own achievements or clients' achievements that obviously speak to who you are as a professional. So go for it.
Sure. Well, they're like, I'm going to tell you about the things that are obvious achievements, and then I'm going to share the non-obvious.
Okay. Sounds great.
The obvious achievements are that, I'm so grateful and happy that I've raised two beautiful teenagers who are now going off to live their own lives, which is wonderful. I've achieved, a lot of unexpected success in my industry. It is a very male dominated industry. There are very few women at the top. And I have been lucky enough to find my way somehow to the top and work with, really what I would say, the individuals who I don't know if they're making a difference in the industry, but they're certainly calling the shots in the industry, and participating in those conversations. I feel is something that I've really worked hard for and really enjoy, and have been honored in many different ways within the industry for the work that I've done, especially in e-commerce and digital. And that's super fun. I would say one thing that I have empowered myself around, and this is a little bit darker, but it is something that I struggled with, which was, I was in a marriage with a man who was a good person, but did not respect the role of women and did not see me as an equal. And coming to terms with that and giving myself the, instead of feeling like a failure, because that's immediately where the head goes. You're like, I failed. How could I not see this? How could I not know this? How could I, how did this happen? Instead, I just said, you know what? It's not that I didn't see who he was. He's a good person. It's just not the one for me. This is not what I need in my life to help me go where I want to be. And it's not what I want the girls to see. I didn't want my girls to grow up in a home where there wasn't equality. And it wasn't intentional on his part. It's how he was raised. And I never really considered that when we got married, because when you have children, it kind of, things just change. And so giving myself the permission to leave the relationship and not feel horrible about it, I'm very proud of myself. It is really hard. It's really hard. And the way I honor it, that empowerment, is by trying to have the best possible relationship I can with him as a co-parent, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And thank you so much for your vulnerability in sharing that, because I know other women go through similar situations, and then there's that shame and the guilt that come with it, just like you said. And then we need to extend some compassion and forgiveness for ourselves, and then feel that pride that I actually did something about it. I didn't just, force myself to go through this. Also thinking about the kids and what you are portraying and modeling for them as well, especially since you have two daughters. That's wonderful. Well, the next thing is
more about society doesn't support women who make these choices.
Right.
They don't.
Yeah.
They just don't. They don't. And
it's black and white, but nothing in life is black and white.
It's so true. And the other part is when your kids are in school and a divorce happens, it's, all the other families get really scared. The whole thing. But in any case, it all has worked out. And I just would say for any of the women listening to your podcast, which I know there are many, and I love what you write. I loved your TEDx speech, like love everything you do. I really believe that, that these types of very hard moments where we just tend to like tear ourselves down as a failure, because that's what we're hearing, that we are failures. It's like turning the script around. Is to do that is you are empowering yourself.
100%. Well, and again, I feel like you already spoke to this. The last thing I wanted to touch on is an aspect of transformation and how you've transformed yourself, which I always say my definition of transformation is being more self-accepting. So being more of who you are, right? And being proud of who you've become instead of trying to be somebody else completely different. And I think going through that, the process of listening to yourself, forgiving yourself, empowering yourself really gets you to this place where you own it. You own who you are and you own your decisions and you're better for it. So what would you say is the biggest transformation that you have gone through in this process, especially since starting your business?
I mean, I would say that even though I was treated the same in academics and I was treated the same in university and I was treated the same when it came to like school and work, kind of in work, I always was like, I was always scared to be in front. I was always, even though I learned how to present and I learned to do all the things that were necessary, I never trusted myself because there are messages out there that tell women not to trust yourself and that a man knows better, like that you're waiting for the man to make the decision versus knowing that you can make the decision and that you don't need a man to make the decision for you. And so I guess for me, like my transformation really over the last, decade has been believing that what I have to say is enough, that it's enough. And that of course you collaborate, blah, 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 but it's like, I don't need for a man to stand up and make the decision. I don't know if that makes any sense. It happens in work too. It's like they immediately defer, like in a situation where, let's say there's a restructuring and they don't know who the people are very well. They immediately defer to a man versus immediately think that maybe a woman can do it. And it's with some good reason, because even the most powerful women are like, maybe I should just ask the man.
They do it too.
Do you know what I'm talking about? And so I think that's really it. It's like believing that what I have to say is enough, and that I can make the decision, and that I can have an opinion, that I don't need to look to the man to validate what I'm saying.
Yeah, validation. Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, this leads me to my last question, which was kind of the answer already. You're touching everything.
Yeah.
But let's see what comes about.
Sure.
Jessica, what is an empowered woman?
An empowered woman really feels confident in her own skin, trusts her gut, and knows that her judgment is right.
That's perfect. That's spot on. It is true. It goes along with what you're saying. Self-trust, right? What I have to say is enough. And I'm entitled to my opinion and
entitled to it. It's so true. I mean, like ridiculous when we talk about it.
But it's right. Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, tell us more how people can find you, how people can get these amazing wines. Give us
Sure. Yes. Okay. So the company that I work with is Vintage Wine Estates. And if you go to their website, you'll see all the many different wine brands that we sell. And then my company that I started is called Cameron Hughes Wine. And you can find it online at chwine.com. And of course, you can find me on Instagram. It's just Jessica Kogan, which is my last name. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Kogan. And you can always reach out to me. I'll do my best to get back to you. And I love hearing from everybody. And I will tell you, Marta, I am blown away by what you have accomplished here. First of all, I love TEDs. I love TED Talks. I send them to my daughters all the time because it's like the answer to everything.
Right.
And your TED Talk was beautiful.
Thank you.
It was just beautiful. And what you have gone through to get where you are right now, like it was not easy. Mm-hmm. Like I know it was not easy because English isn't your first language. Right. And you grew up in a totally different culture with very different requirements. And you came to this country and you are teaching women here how to be their best selves. Like it's amazing.
Make me cry.
It's amazing. It's so
Thank you so much.
It's so impressive. And the only way I can say this is like, I'm just so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. It's awesome.
Thank you so much. So appreciate it. Well, and especially since you are an honorary member of the Brazilian family, you understand.
I really do. Do you ever sit back and you're like, how? Like,
well, I have amazing people in my life like you that remind me. My coaches, oftentimes when I'm like, oh, this and that, and they're like, you are not from here.
You aren't. And you have accomplished more than like 99% of the people here with like your hands tied behind your back, because that's kind of what it is like when you come here from a totally different place with a totally different language. That is what it is like. It's not going to England, it's like, it's totally different. And how you have found your way, like I'm just curious. I would love to know what has been your inspiration to do what you do, to be out there and share your story and help other women be better. Like, tell me where that comes from.
Oh my gosh. That is the $1 million question. I think I've had this inner drive, and I attribute that a lot with identifying with the American culture of things are not going to be handed to me. And in many ways, with my family, things had been handed to me, which is not the reality of the majority of Brazilians. I grew up in a very fortunate situation, but I chose to challenge myself, right? So from the beginning, I was the one that said, this is great, but I want something else. I actually want to experience life and get out of the bubble. But now as I get older, especially as a mom, I see that a lot of this courage that I had, which was, it took a lot of courage to do the things.
Oh my God.
Especially leaving Brazil, not to then send money to my family, because that's the reality of many Brazilians. They come in and start working, small jobs. And then they're like, now I'm getting paid in dollars. I can send money to Brazil. Yeah. My parents didn't need my money. Yeah. In fact, they didn't want me to leave. They thought I was crazy. So it was different. But
it is not normal. It's not normal. For the record, like it is not normal for Brazilians. It's not normal.
So, but now looking back, I see a lot of this in my mom, because even though the journey was not similar, she went through a lot of pushback in pursuing the things that she wanted to do. She started her own ministry, her own church, and my dad was not a part of it willingly. And that is very different. So thinking about like male dominated, industries, she was a pastor on her own. It wasn't like she was a vice pastor. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So she was a huge role model, which it took me a while to even accept that, because I willingly moved away from that to start my life here. But now as I look back, I'm like, I am doing very similar things because I'm pioneering things on my own, even when people around me say that I'm not supposed to be doing that. And she's been a big supporter too. So
that's amazing. I know it must be heartbreaking for them because they want to be around you all the time and you're like so far away, but to see what you've done here is just, they must be so proud of you. Like, I mean, they must look at you and just be like, where are you from? How did you get
Well, and that's what I even put that in my book. Regardless of the difficulties, obviously, growing up with your parents, I now see, especially again, being a mom, that they were the perfect parents for me, right? They put me on this path of, oh my gosh, you're making me cry again, of working hard for things, right? And again, even though they created a good life for me and my sister, they always said, things are not going to be handed out to you. You are in a privileged position, so don't forget it. So I remember, and I carry those words with me, that if I want something, I need to go after them. And that's what I've done. So,
I mean, you are a lesson in it. I mean, and this is I hear this a lot from people who I work with, and they ask me this a lot. Like, so how did it all happen? Did it just happen? And, like, you started your company, and it's like, it is a sacrifice. You have to sacrifice to achieve what you want to achieve. I don't see another way around it. And the work you have to put in is Herculean. And and that you did not, this wasn't your first language. Like, and people like me are barely, like, we're just like barely, like, we're like climbing to the top. You're like, I feel like you're galloping to the top, and you have this natural talent, and it's inspiring. And I love that you are focused on helping women be better, because truly through your story, your journey of courage, because it is courage to leave your country, a comfortable home, a comfortable life, to come to a country where everything is different, right, a little backwards sometimes. Here. and then to see that there are people who are to take your own experience and help specifically your gender that likely you're seeing are struggling. Help us be better. Like, I just wish there were more people like you who speak honestly and truly about what is going on, because what we're seeing are books being published by people who aren't really going after it from the beginning. They've had a lot of lifts.
Yeah.
You did it on your own.
I'm so grateful for our conversation. So grateful that we're connected now.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
I'm a member of the family, so
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much. I so appreciate this conversation, and I'll put all your information in the show notes so that people can connect with you as well.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends, or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.